We are happy to be together in Bucharest with Dr. Laura Markham from AHA Parenting. Thank you for being here. We had a 2-day conference which was great, and we thank you for this. We are here together with 4 Romanian bloggers that we read weekly or some of them daily, and they gathered some questions from their community, and we are waiting for your answers.
Okay.
They are going to introduce themselves.
Hello, I'm Christina. And first of all, I would like to thank you for being here. It was a really great experience attending your conferences. My community, my blog, focuses on education and cultural education, so it's not a parenting blog. But still, since I think that in order to have educated children, you need to have educated parents, I think promoting and writing about parenting and about your conferences in particular it's a good thing and it's appropriate. I gathered a few questions from the readers. First one would be, how can we teach children to deal with adults, with difficult adults or with adults that have, for example, psychic problems? The idea is that one of the readers has a child. She raises him on her own because the father is a psychopath, or at least has some issues, and in the past he abused them. So she is asking this: how can she teach the child do better?
Well, it's one thing to say, how do you teach children to deal with people who have issues? It's another to say, his father has issues. How does he deal with his father? They're very different questions. So the first one is pretty easy. If you raise a child to be emotionally healthy, they will be fine dealing with people in general who have issues. But when it's your father, it's a whole different thing. When it's your father, it means that you go through life not being able to get what you need from your father and worrying that you might be like your father. So it's a very complicated and hard burden for a child to carry when a woman chooses to have a child with someone who is going to be his father for the rest of his life. Even if the man dies, that's his father. It's an everlasting relationship, right? How to deal with his father? It depends on how often he sees his father, right? If she raises him to be emotionally healthy, he'll be better able to deal with his father, but he'll probably spend the rest of his life coming to terms with the fact that he has a father who was abusive. And he probably needs therapy, honestly. It's probably not something a mom can deal with herself when her child has suffered abuse. And if the child witnessed the father abusing the mother, there is a very high likelihood that unless the child has therapy, he would repeat such abuse against women when he grows up. So I would say in that case, probably therapy would be very helpful.
How can we teach our children empathy and sharing? Is it connected to the age, or is it still about education?
Well, I don't think empathy and sharing are the same thing at all. So I could answer those separately. Empathy, everyone is born with mirror neurons that allow them to understand what someone else is feeling. But unless their own needs are met, they cannot necessarily deal with someone else's needs. And in fact, they may find someone else's needs to be very painful if their own needs have not been met. So teaching empathy is really a matter of giving the child empathy. If we empathize, they develop empathy. That's a natural process. And there's a timeline where you will not see a 2-year-old exhibit much empathy, right? But even 2-year-olds have been known to offer their blanket to another child who's crying because they feel concern, if they have been raised with a great deal of responsiveness to their own needs. So empathy will happen naturally as long as the parents empathize with the child. There's no need to teach, but you can hasten the process by asking the child questions like, why do you think that little boy is crying over there? Because it helps them to develop the ability to see things from someone else's point of view and to consider other people's perspectives, which is something that we develop by practice. So that's empathy. Sharing is something else entirely because our own needs are quite involved in sharing. We want it. I'm not sharing my water, I want the water. So for a child, if the child is expected to give the other child the water when he's hungry or thirsty, there's no way he will share that. But if the child has enough water, I had enough water, now I will give you water, the child can easily do that. And then the child experiences, oh, you were so happy when you got the water. I love that feeling inside me of helping you to be happy. Oh, I like that. I'm someone who gives to other people, and I like that feeling. And then the child begins to develop generosity. And then when someone's thirsty, even if I'm a little thirsty, I might say, I could give you this water because you need it. And that's sharing, but there's a developmental trajectory. There's children will gradually develop that ability, but they need to know that their own needs will be met. So if parents can say, don't worry, you can have that for as long as you need it. There's enough water for everyone. There's enough toys for everyone, and you may use the toy for as long as you want to. And then when do you think you would be ready to give the other child a turn? Not to share. What does sharing mean anyway? It means I lose something. To give the other child a turn with the toy. When will you be ready? And the child says, 5 minutes? 10 minutes? And then when the child is ready and gives the toy, they get that feeling of generosity again. And it makes them more likely to give a turn the next time. So that's how sharing works.
Thank you. How do we raise the level of tolerance to frustration in children when it comes, for example, to coping with school?
Well, everyone is a little different neurologically. So some people are more patient and more tolerant and more able to bear frustration than other people. But in general, when a child believes that their needs will be met, that they're being listened to, that when they speak, someone hears them, they are more able to tolerate frustration. So when they feel heard at home, then when they go to school, they have more internal resources to cope with any burden that is placed on them at school. And school can be trying for everyone.
My last question is, how can we as adults measure, as children do, the quality and quantity of attention given to each of the brothers? So in order to avoid you love him more or her.
Yes, I think that it's not about comparing and measuring how much we're giving. It's more about, are your needs met? Are your needs met? Are your needs met? No matter how much your brother gets, there is more than enough for you. Your needs will be met. That's what the parent needs to aspire to.
Hi, my name is Diana, and I'm writing on a blog about, let's say, parenting. Actually, it's about me and my kids and also parenting. And thank you very much for being here. I was present at the conferences, and it was, I found out a lot of interesting things from you. I've also been reading your blog, so I have a couple of questions from my community and from myself. And the first one will be, how about lying? Okay, you've said that children tend to lie when they are punished, and that's clear. But what about children that are not punished? Do they also lie, and how do we handle them lying?
Well, all children will experiment with lying. Lying, the ability to lie, is a big cognitive leap, a developmental leap that children make around the age of 4, where they suddenly realize that you see things differently than I do. Before that, they assume that everyone sees things the same way. So if I take the book and I put it under here and you don't see me do that, and I'm 3 years old, I assume you know the book is there. If I'm 3 years old and I do that, and she says to me, where's the book? And she says to you, where's the book? I'm 3, I think you know. Of course you know where the book is, it's obviously under there. But when they're 4, they put it under there and they realize, oh my goodness, Mommy doesn't know where the book is. Mommy doesn't know where the book, oh my goodness. And a whole world of possibility opens up. Do you know where this book is? Oh my goodness. Does she know I ate the cookie? Does she know that I didn't wash my hands when I came to dinner? She doesn't know what I know. And they test that. They're very excited. Oh yes, I washed my hands. So that's fine. That's what every child can be expected to do. But parents get very worried. My child is lying to me. I must stop this immediately. This is a terrible thing. And they overreact. They get very worried and they punish the child. And when they do that, the child feels like, why is my parent hurting me on purpose? I don't understand this. And it's a trauma. And when there is trauma, we always try to work it out to heal it. So if you punish me for lying about the book, I'm going to try something else. Maybe she won't know if I put the water under. Will I get punished for that? And over again, the child will lie. So the worst thing we can do to children when we want to change their behavior in any way is to punish them, because it will traumatize them and they will repeat the behavior. So your child lies. Oh, of course I washed my hands. And you know they didn't wash their hands. You know they're lying. And what you say is, I see. You wish you washed your hands. You wish you didn't have to wash them right now. But it's time to eat. We need to wash your hands. Come on, let's go wash your hands. And it's just very simple. It's not a tragedy. It's not a major offense. It's not a crime. You're just trying out pushing on the limit. It's like saying, I don't want to go to bed. I know. It's hard to go to bed. Time for bed. Let's go. Time to wash hands. Let's go. So there's no punishment necessary. The child learns, oh, I can't get away with lying. And as the child gets older, you speak with the child about it and you say, do you know what a lie is? A lie is when I ask you, did you wash your hands? And you say, oh, yes, but you know it's not true. So I need to know when you tell me something that it's the truth so I can count on that. And so when you want to tell me when it's not true, just say that. Say, I want to tell you I washed my hands, but I didn't. Just tell me it like a secret, and then I'll know. So the child learns, oh, it's okay to want to lie, but my mother always understands, and she helps me to not lie.
My second question is about money and the value of things, and how do we teach that? And also, what is your opinion on, let's say, paying for house chores? Because some parents asked about, okay, can I pay him for taking out the garbage or cleaning the dishes? Or what is your opinion on this?
Well, there are people who think that, so let me back up, actually. Allowance is a good thing, and I don't know what the word for allowance would be in Romanian, but in the United States, the word is allowance, and it means we give the child a small amount of money, and that's theirs to spend as they wish, and it's so that they learn to manage money. That's the purpose of it. We want them to learn to manage money, and that is how they learn the value of things. So if they have a small amount of money, and they use it to buy a toy, and then next day they're very angry, the toy is not working right, and they throw it and they break it, they don't have the toy and they don't have the money, and they learn the value of things. So giving a child a small amount of money, the same amount of money, every single week is a good thing, so the child learns the value of things and to manage their money. There are some people who believe that the best way to get children to do chores or work around the house, household work, is to give them the allowance only if they do their work. I think that's a little bit of a problem, because then the child can decide not to do the work. I remember very distinctly that when I was 6 years old, I wanted a little toy horse at the store. And I said to my mother, how can I earn money to get the toy horse? And she said, you can do work in the house. Every week you must set the table and clean up the dishes after dinner. I said, okay. I did it very faithfully every single day. And at the end of the week, I got the money, and it wasn't enough. So the next week I did the same thing. And I got the money again, and I went to the store and I got the horse, and I was so happy. And that night I was playing with my horse, and my mother said, it's time to set the table. And I said, I have my horse. I don't need to set the table. And she said, but you must do this every day now. And I said, no, I did that for the horse. That was our arrangement. Now you expect me to do it every day? I don't need it. If I need something again, I'll let you know and I'll do the dishes. So why would a child not think that, right? I believe that all children should help in the house a small amount, because the research shows that when children help in the house, they are more helpful. So when they did some studies and they had the children outside a store and a woman walked out and she dropped her package on the street, some of the children ran to pick it up for her. They were the children who help around the house. They were the children who were more helpful. So I do think that it's good when children help. They learn to be more helpful. And I think that it's important for children to understand that in a family, everybody helps. We all help each other. But they also have their own jobs. Their job is to go to school and to do well. They can't work too much or they can't do well at school. And all children need some time to just do nothing. It is very important that they have some time to just do nothing. So they can't work too much, but all children should help. I think they help, and that's separate from the money, I think. Just like I would feed them even if they didn't help, that's something that is their right. And they work just like, we all contribute to the family, and they don't get paid for that.
And what do you think would be the appropriate age to get an allowance?
It might be different in Romania, but in the United States, children begin to ask for things quite early, right, at 4 or 5 years old. And I think a small amount of allowance is fine, but I also think that parents, you can't give a 4-year-old very much money, very small amount of money. So I think that when children begin to ask for things, I would say to them, oh, you like that, show me. Oh, that's so great. I see. You would like that, I hear you. Today we're not buying that. That's not in our budget for today. But you know what we could do? Let me write it down. Here, I'll write it on my phone. And then, when it's your birthday, I will ask you if you still want this. And if that's still what you want, maybe that's what you'll get for your birthday. So children cannot buy big things when they are 4 or 5 years old. But you still might want them to have a small amount. But maybe 6 or 7 is a better age in Romania. It depends on your culture.
You've been talking to us about reading and the importance of reading to children. And I wanted to ask you, what kind of stories are better to be read to children? I don't know, fairy tales or the old ones where the wolf eats the real Red Riding Hood. What do you think about this?
I think that every child is different, but some children become quite frightened by those fairy tales, and they're not appropriate for very young children. So I think you always take your cues from your child. And if you have a child who's easily frightened, then I would not read, I don't think I would read any young child the story about a wolf eating the grandmother. I think it's fine for children to understand that there are good guys and bad guys in stories, but they do find it scary. My son said to me when he was 6, I don't understand why there are bad guys. I don't like stories with bad guys. And I said, well, the writer thinks it's a more exciting story if there are bad guys. And my son said, no, you could have the weather be difficult. There could be a big storm. There are plenty of ways to have an exciting story without bad guys. Bad guys make me feel unhappy. And I thought, oh, he's telling me very clearly. He does not want those stories. Even at 6, he's not ready for them yet. So I waited to bring those stories in until he was more capable of handling those emotions. As I say, every child is different. He was letting me know what worked for him. So we have to listen to the child.
The next question is about death. How do we talk to children about death, considering the issues in Paris, for instance, and we also had an event where people died here in Bucharest. It's almost impossible not to bring the idea of death to children. What do we tell them? When do we tell them? What can they understand? What is better not to be said? How do we deal with this?
So first of all, there's a lot of research on news exposure, being exposed to the news. And it shows that even adults who are exposed to TV news believe the world is a more dangerous place than it is. Because the TV news isn't really about what's the most important information for you to have as a viewer. It's really about selling advertising. So they make it, the newscasters, they want ratings. They want an audience. That's their product. So they make it as controversial as they can. So it's not very good for adults to watch the news, and it's terrible for children. So I would not have the TV on with the news ever around a young child, ever. And if there's been a terrible fire in a nightclub, or if there's been terrorist attacks in Paris, I would especially not have the news on. Now, that doesn't mean we don't talk to children about the news. It's very different if we talk to them. If we think about our own reaction as adults to seeing the TV news, where over and over again they're playing the same thing about the terrorist attack in Paris, and we just can't even tear ourselves away from the TV, we know how traumatizing it is. You would never want a child ever to see that news. So I would just say, to start with, we can talk to children about news, but they should not see it for as long as possible. And we shouldn't watch it, truthfully. So that's the first thing. Now, at what age can children be told about such things? I don't think there's ever a reason for a 4 or 5-year-old to hear about such incidents, ever. And I wouldn't talk about it in front of them, because I think it's very hard for them to understand it. If, however, the child has heard about it at school, then we might have to say something. And there are times when teachers are not very astute about what a 5-year-old is ready to handle, and the teacher may say something in school about the attacks in Paris, for instance, or the nightclub fire. And in that case, usually, if you have a good relationship with your child and they feel they can tell you anything, then they will bring it up, and they'll say to you as you're walking home, "Mommy, the teacher said there was a fire." And I would say, "Really? Tell me more. What did the teacher say?" You want to know what the child has heard. And the child says, "There was a fire and people were screaming and they were trying to get out of the building and they died." "What does that mean, Mommy, they died?" And you say, "It means their bodies stopped working and they could not live again. Remember when we found the dead bird and the bird was still and could not sing and could not fly? That's what happened to their bodies, because fire is very dangerous. That's why you stay away from the stove. That's why you stay away from the fireplace." And the child says, "But Mommy, why were they trapped?" And I would say the truth, but some simple version of the truth. I would say, most buildings are safe. Most buildings are safe because when the builder builds the building, they know they have certain rules about building it, and only a certain number of people are allowed in the building at the same time. So if there's a problem, the building is strong and the people can get out before there's a big problem, like the fire starts. But in this nightclub, some people were very greedy. They wanted to make money, and they paid someone and they received permission to break the rules. We don't break the rules because the rules keep people safe. That's why we keep rules. And this was terrible that this happened. And a lot of people are very upset about it, and they have decided to do something about it. And that's why they are protesting now. So it is important that the child hears that when there is injustice, there's something we can do about it. Because when the child just feels like people die, people are allowed to break the rules and then people die, then the child feels hopeless and cynical and does not stand up for their own needs or for what is right in the society. But when the child hears that, oh, there are people who are angry, they want to do something about this, then the child is able to say, when I grow up, I'm going to be someone who stands up for what's right. I'm going to protest if the rules are broken and people die. So it's very important that your child hear that these things can be addressed, that we are so lucky to now live in a society where there is a democracy emerging, that we can take action as citizens and hold our society and our government accountable to live by the rules. And it's always work. In a democracy, it takes all the citizens staying involved, but I can do this. When I grow up, I will do this. And it empowers the child. So I would always talk to the child about the issue, but I would keep it very simple.
Do you have a word of advice for parents of strong-willed children?
Well, strong-willed children are quite wonderful because they are people of integrity and they cannot be intimidated. They will always stand up for what they want and what they believe is right. And the parent needs to not try to get them to cooperate by intimidating them, but instead by cooperating with the child, partnering with the child, letting the child know their needs will be met. But I'm the parent, you're the child. Some things you can decide. You can decide what sandwich to have, but I decide when it's bedtime. And so you're very clear with the child about these are the things you can do. You want to try that new thing? You want to walk by yourself? Okay, you can do this. We will teach you to cross the street and walk by yourself safely, right, now that you are 10. But you give the child the ability to try new things and to master things as they are ready, rather than maintaining all the control yourself. The strong-willed child needs some control. They want mastery. They want to be in charge of themselves. And at the same time, you need to decide which are the things you need to be in charge of and let them know. No, that I'm in charge of because I'm the mom.
Hello, I am Raluca. I have a personal blog about my life as a mother, as I have a 2-year-old boy. And I have some questions from my readers, but also from a community of mothers. And I'm very glad to be here because I am really inspired by your site and by your books. My first question comes from a group of moms who have a daily issue regarding brothers. They have 2 kids, a baby and a toddler, and they want to know how can they prioritize the needs of both children. For example, the baby cries because he's hungry or he wants to be carried around, and the toddler wants the full attention of the mom. And how can they prioritize this without hurting the older child?
The only way to do it is prevention. So when you don't take care of your car and get a tune-up and an oil change, your car breaks down. When you don't prepare to feed your baby, to keep the toddler busy while you feed your toddler will drive you crazy as you feed the baby. There's no way around that. They just do it. So you could think of it, you bring the new baby home, you sit down to feed the baby, and the toddler sees that. It's like you're having sex with someone else in front of your husband. That's what it feels like to the toddler, right? And so you have to help the toddler feel like they have something to do. You got them started on doing that thing first. So I advise people, even before they have the new baby, to create little activity boxes or activity bags of things that they put up in a closet, and then before they feed the baby, bring it down and give the toddler a new one. And you could have 6 of them, and then you trade them. And the toddler has something to do while you're busy. If you haven't already done that, you haven't done the prevention, what do you do in that moment? The baby's hungry, you have to feed the baby. So I would say one thing that really helps, once the baby is not a newborn, you can sit on the floor with your toddler. So that, try to get comfortable leaning against the chair and sit on the floor, and you say to your toddler, come, bring your toy here. And your toddler has his trucks or his trains, and you're right there, or that she has her little tea party, and you play with the toddler while you're feeding the baby, right, as much as you can. If you've got a bottle, it's harder, right, because you don't have 2 hands. If you're nursing, it's easier. But you're actually trying to relate to the toddler. If you are on a chair, that's the worst place to feed the baby, because your toddler can't fit. So sit on a couch and put the toddler here with a book and read, so the toddler knows this is a special time. Sure, the baby's eating, but I get to be read to by mommy. So the toddler gets to read the book with you. So there are many ways to occupy the toddler, but you can't expect the toddler to occupy himself while you're feeding the baby, at least not in the beginning. After a while, the toddler will relax and realize you still love him and it's okay. But in the beginning, when you sit down to feed the baby, you really have to go through the process of making sure the toddler is okay first. So you're prioritizing the infant's needs. You're not saying, I'm not going to feed my baby because the toddler is jealous, of course. But you realize that the toddler needs you too. And you can do both things. You can be feeding the baby and say, oh, show me. Oh, I see. Look at you. Hey, sing me a song. Do a dance for me. You're relating to the toddler, so the toddler feels the full sunshine of your attention, embracing them, even at the same time that you're feeding the baby.
My second question is regarding the feeling of guilt in mothers. I see this feeling all the time because, for example, a mother is furious and she screams maybe sometimes, or she cannot give the child enough attention, and then this feeling comes around. And how do we manage it? And does it have anything to do with our issues from our own childhood?
So first of all, I think it's very hard to be a mother. I think it's hard even if you have one child to be a mother. And if you have a second child, it's much harder. And if you have a work outside the home, which many, many mothers do, then it's impossible. It's really impossible because you cannot, I mean, think about it. Before you had a baby, ever, you worked all day, you came home, you were exhausted. And now you come home and there's children? Like, how can you do that? So you can expect that you will not have enough for everybody. So it becomes very important that you try to take care of yourself. And I believe that as a parent, our first responsibility is our own well-being. If we do not feel good, there is no way we can be emotionally generous to our child. And if we are not feeling emotionally generous to the child will feel it, and they will feel it as criticism of them. They will feel like, Mommy doesn't really love me, there must be something wrong with me, even when they can't say that. So I do think it is important to do, the most important thing, of course, is to keep your children fed and get them into bed so they can sleep. And the next important thing is to get yourself to bed. And that's about it. Like, that's what matters. And then you love them. And if they wear clothes that are dirty the next day, who cares? Seriously, if you're feeding them, eggs every night, who cares? As long as they get some carrots, like it doesn't, I think that we put our attention on the wrong things. We worry too much about our hair. Honestly, like, who cares? What matters is that we stay in a good mood. And therefore, no, I can't, I'm sorry, I can't do that at the school. No, I'm sorry, boss, I can't do that extra job. And to really try to do nothing extra, be ruthless about it, so that we have the time, if possible, to get enough sleep, so we can stay in a good mood. Now, what if every day you wake up and you feel, oh God, I can't believe I have to get up and deal with these children again? That's a problem. That shows that you're not giving yourself enough support, or you're not getting enough support, and you need to go find it. So I would say, does this have to do with our childhoods? Often when we come into our parenting and we already feel like we're not good enough, then it will come out with our children. And every day we wake up and we're tired and life feels overwhelming to us. So yes, then it is about our own childhoods, but I think you don't even need your childhood to be a problem. You could have a great childhood and you could still find motherhood very overwhelming, and you could feel guilty. So I would say, if you get upset at your children and you yell at your children and you feel terrible, start by having compassion for yourself and just say, okay, I'm not perfect. I'm not perfect, it's okay. I'm still good enough. I love myself. And then you say, I'm going to work on taking better care of me so I don't do that, because it's not good for my children to yell at them. And I'm going to explain to my children so they understand that they don't deserve to be yelled at. I don't want my children growing up feeling like they're not good enough, because that's maybe what I brought in from my childhood. And then I would say, I'm so sorry I yelled at you. You never deserve to get yelled at. I am going to work on not yelling, okay? And you shake on it and you say, we always keep our promises. I'm going to try very hard. And the next time you find yourself yelling, you go, your child is going to look at you like, and you say, you just stop right in the middle of yelling. Even if you're right, even if your child is being terrible, even if your child just hit her little brother, you stop. And you try to calm yourself, and then you say, I am angry, I will talk to you in a minute. And you turn away and you try to calm down. And then you come back and you say, okay, it is never okay to hit your brother, but you didn't yell at your child. And now, because your child is not frightened because you're not yelling, she can hear you. And she'll say, but he took my toy. And you say, that's a big problem. I hear you. Your little brother takes all your toys because he's a baby. He takes things. It's still never okay to hit him. What else could you do? Could I help you do that? Could you call me? Let's practice. Now you're solving the problem with your child instead of yelling. So there are many ways to intervene with children, and the more calm you are. I was doing still a little angry, right, with the child, but you could be even more calm. You could first take care of the baby and help the baby, and then when you come back to your child, you're even more calm. And you say, wow, you were so upset you hit him and he was really crying. What happened? And now you're very sympathetic to the child, and she tells you about the toy, and you say, oh, no wonder you were upset. And now you're actually, she feels very safe with you, and she'll tell you, and she wants to learn how to do it differently. Because you know what she really wants? She wants a mommy who doesn't yell. She wants a mommy who understands and who helps her solve her problem. And her problem, of course, in this case, is her brother's always taking her toys. So I think these are hard things to learn for parents, how to parent this way. But what's demoralizing for parents is not the hard work. What's demoralizing for parents is feeling like they don't know what to do or how to do it. And they just yell over and over again. So I would advise a parent who feels guilty for yelling, use the guilt. Use it. Say, okay, I feel terribly guilty, but I'm not going to beat myself up. That won't make me feel better. Instead, I'm going to change. I'm going to try to learn to do something different. And even if I yell 3 more times today, I'm going to stop. As soon as I notice I'm yelling, I'm going to stop. And when I do, I have a chance to maybe next time I can stop yelling before I even start. I can say, because that's what happens. The more we pay attention, the more we're able to stop ourselves. So the guilt doesn't help. All it is a signal that that's not who you want to be. You don't want to be that parent. So use the guilt to not be that parent. And just one step at a time. You can't be perfect. You won't be perfect. No human is perfect. But one step at a time, and you can get there.